Vice President Sara Duterte wants the dismissal of the impeachment complaint filed against her, calling it void ab initio or invalid from the outset. Duterte's camp raises this argument in a 34-page document sent to the impeachment court on Monday, June 23. The Vice President did not personally appear before the Senate on Monday, but the answer was filed by officials from her office at exactly 5:49 p.m. Sitting as an impeachment court, the Senate ordered the Vice President to answer the impeachment case filed against her. Duterte's camp says the impeachment complaint supposedly violated the limitations set under the 1987 Constitution, wherein only one impeachment proceeding may be initiated against the same official within 1 year. This is the same argument raised by Duterte before the Supreme Court in February 2025. But as early as February, members of the House prosecution team noted that the one-year ban had not set in yet before Duterte was impeached on February 5. According to San Juan Representative Isabel Maria Zamora, the one-year ban on new complaints had not set in yet because the first 3 impeachment complaints did not leave the office of the House Secretary General. She cites a Supreme Court ruling saying the one-year prohibition on the filing of new impeachment complaints will start only after the charges are forwarded to the House Committee on Justice. Duterte was impeached after 215 House lawmakers filed and signed a verified impeachment complaint against her. The articles of impeachment accuse Duterte of violating the Constitution and committing high crimes. This includes corruption and involvement in an alleged assassination plot against President Bongbong Marcos. The complaint also cites her release and spending of 125 million pesos in confidential and intelligence funds within 11 days of assuming office in 2022. Philippine Ambassador to Israel Eileen Mendiola says more Filipinos in Israel expressed their intent to return to the Philippines amid the conflict with Iran. In a radio interview on Monday, June 23, Mendiola says the embassy has around 250 repatriation requests, with 50 Filipinos confirming they want to leave Israel. Mendiola says these 50 Filipinos will be repatriated in the coming days and brought to Jordan by Tuesday, June 24. So far, Mendiola says the embassy assisted around 100 Filipinos who crossed the border of Jordan for safety. The official further says that an additional 32 Filipinos had their homes damaged due to strikes. This brings the total affected Filipinos to 127. She says these additional displaced Filipinos were able to go to bomb shelters. Of the 127, Mendiola says 118 were relocated, while the embassy is still working on the resettling of the other 9. Mendiola says that the number of injured Filipinos in Israel is 8. Among those injured, she says an unidentified female caregiver remains in critical condition. The Philippine government earlier raised Alert Level 3 in Israel. Under this alert level, Filipinos are encouraged to undergo voluntary repatriation. The Philippines earlier urged concerned parties to avoid the escalation of conflict in the Middle East. U.S. President Donald Trump announced on Saturday, June 21, that the U.S. military conducted a very successful attack on 3 Iranian nuclear sites. 3 areas of Israel were hit Sunday morning, June 22, during waves of Iranian missile attacks. Iran also threatened U.S. bases in the Middle East after Washington's massive airstrikes. PDP-Laban is officially asking for a manual recount of votes for senator in the recently concluded 2025 midterm elections. Lawyer Israelito Torion filed before the Supreme Court PDP-Laban's motion for leave to file a supplemental petition for mandamus to call for the manual recount. PDP-Laban National Vice Chairman Alfonso Cusi represented the party in its petition. In a 6-page petition dated June 19, Cusi says the petition was filed so that the supposed truth may be known and public confidence in the electoral process may be restored. The petitioner alleges that the automatic counting machines incorrectly flagged ballots as having overvoted in the senatorial race. The petition cites the more than 17 million votes that were considered in the senatorial official tally as overvotes. The PDP-Laban candidates earlier called for a full, independent, and transparent investigation into alleged election irregularities. They also called for a forensic audit of the automated counting machines used in the midterm elections. Commission on Elections Chairman George Garcia welcomes the High Court petition. He says they will wait for the Supreme Court's action on the matter. Poll watchdog National Citizens Movement for Free Elections earlier said there were enough safeguards to the system during the 2025 elections. It also said that while the 2025 polls were orderly, the elections were still marred by disruptions. Malacanang claps back at Vice President Sara Duterte's recent tirades against the Marcos administration. At a briefing on Monday, June 23, Press Officer Claire Castro was asked to respond to Duterte's remarks, questioning where the country's ballooning national debt has gone. Speaking at a gathering of Filipinos in Australia, the Vice President had wondered where and how the government spent the 16 trillion peso national debt.
Bakit 16 trillion ang utang natin? And wala din tayong nakikita. Nasaan ang inutang? Kasi dapat pag nagutang ka, may nakikita ka.
In response, Castro clarified that the 16 trillion peso Duterte referred to is the total debt of the Philippine government. She says much of the total debt had accumulated even before President Bongbong Marcos took office. She also points out that trillions of pesos in debt were incurred during the administration of Duterte's father, arrested former President Rodrigo Duterte.
May kasabihan nga tayo, ang hindi marunong tumingin sa pinanggalingan, hindi talaga malalaman ang katotohanan. Okay, ang tandaan po natin, ang utang na 16 trillion ay kabuuang utang ng gobyerno simula pa noong mga nakaraang administrasyon. At tatandaan din po natin ng ang administrasyon ni dating Pangulong Duterte ang naitalang may pinakamataas na naging utang na umabot ng 12.79 trillion as of June 2022. At solong utang po ng administrasyong Duterte ay umaabot po sa 6.84 trillion as of June 2022 at nagkaroon ng increase ng 115.1% sa pagkakautang.
She questions the Vice President on whether she failed to recognize the Marcos administration's projects for the people. Castro cites improved PhilHealth benefit packages, the 20 peso per kilo rice program, fuel subsidies, and others. In the same event, Duterte once again expressed regret about having teamed up with Marcos during the 2022 elections. Castro says the president has no personal reaction to this.
Sa ugali po ng Pangulo, hindi po natin madidinig ang ganung mga klaseng negatibo mula sa kanya. Kung may nagsisisi man na sa kanya ay maka-team up siya, it's their loss, not the president's.
Marcos and Duterte ran under the Unit Team banner in the 2022 national elections. However, their political alliance was fractured, which became evident when Duterte resigned from her post as Education Secretary last year. Manila 3rd District Representative Joel Chua says there is jurisprudence stating that impeachable officials must be impeached first before a criminal case can be filed against them. In a press briefing on Monday, June 23, Chua was asked about the possibility that Vice President Sara Duterte may be tried by the Senate Impeachment Court. This, while the Office of the Ombudsman conducts a preliminary investigation regarding Duterte's alleged confidential fund misuse. The Ombudsman will eventually either file a case before the Sandigan Bayan or dismiss the complaints. In response, Chua cites a case stating that impeachable officers must be impeached first before they are charged.
Meron ako kasing isang concern lang dyan. Dahil meron po isang kaso, yung Ombudsman versus Court of Appeal, kung saan sinabi po dito ng ating kagalang-galang na Korte Suprema na yung mga impeachable officers kagaya po ng Ombudsman, bago po sila makasuhan, dapat i-impeach muna sila. So, hindi ko alam kung paano ito i-reconcile dito po sa case po ng ating Vice Presidente. Kung sakasakali na ilabas nila muna ang desisyon bago lumabas ang desisyon ng impeachment court.
In the decision, the Supreme Court mentions jurisprudence, particularly a 1995 ruling on petition seeking the disbarment of former Ombudsman Aniano Desierto. The ruling states that the Ombudsman and other constitutional officers required by the Constitution to be members of the Philippine Bar and are removable only by impeachment are immunized from liability, possibly for criminal acts. According to Chua, a possible solution was that the Ombudsman defer its investigation and filing of cases against Duterte. But he adds that the probe into the other office of the Vice President and Department of Education officers involved would continue.
Insofar as the other respondents, except for the Vice President, pwede naman pong umabante. But dun po sa Vice President, hindi pa muna siya unless and until lumabas yung resulta ng impeachment that's the only time na po pwede siyang makasuhan.
The House Committee on Good Government and Public Accountability on June 10 recommended the filing of criminal charges against Duterte and other officials over alleged confidential fund misuse within OVP and DepEd. The Office of the Ombudsman on June 20 asked Duterte to respond to the complaints based on the report from the committee led by Chua. Chua admitted that he and the prosecution panel for Duterte's impeachment trial were surprised by the Ombudsman's quick action on the committee recommendations. The Department of Energy says local oil firms agreed to a staggered implementation of price increases at the pump. This comes as petroleum prices continue to rise amid the escalating conflict in the Middle East. The DOE says it met with oil firms on Monday, June 23 to soften the impact of impending hikes on consumers. In a statement, DOE officer in charge Sharon Garin says the meeting reflects the shared commitment to balance economic realities and the need to shield consumers from sudden price shocks. Garin notes that the hefty price movements will be distributed over a more manageable period. Companies that took part in the discussion include Petron, Shell, Caltex, Jetty, and Petrogas. Insular, Phoenix, PTT Philippines, Sea Oil, Total, Unioil, Philpride, and Clean Fuel also joined the discussion. Estimates from industry sources show that this week's pump prices could go as high as 5 pesos and 10 centavos per liter.